Good evening, freedom fighters. It is 6 p.m. East Coast time, November 15th, 2024. This is a picture of a boat that I'm on that someone took of us. I would say we're about 40 or 50 miles from shore here, and those mountain ranges are right at 80 miles, I believe, Fairweather Mountain Range. Could be a little bit off on the distance. It's a massive glacier system. I just want to start off with one of the most beautiful sceneries I've ever seen was the northern lights over this mountain range. I think 40 or 50 or 60 miles offshore we are. So many places, I just can't remember all the numbers. But I want to show you why I think I was removed, why they would remove a commercial fisherman from Twitter. The same reason I was removed from Facebook without any strikes. No warning from Twitter either. No strikes. I've never had any strikes for anything. Completely removed me from Facebook and Twitter now. And TikTok was one of the most censored platforms I ever tried to get on and talk about weather. They censored everything. So I never did any videos on TikTok after a few weeks. But look at this. This is why I believe I was removed. This is the hurricane maker. When I showed this on Facebook, they kicked me completely off Facebook. That I never really talked about anything, not COVID, not fighting anything. I just showed this was hurricane makers. They spray material for this machine to work storms. Here is this machine working a few days ago, and when I showed this machine working, they removed me from Twitter. And this is truly what I believe had me removed. I showed lasers, I believe, lighting storms and lighting fires and maybe helping a volcano go off, but I really don't think that's why. This here has been a problem for me from the beginning. This is the hurricane maker. Stand by for the truth. The most censored topic on the internet is weather control. They'll never admit to this because the liability will be too much. It is completely self-propelled. And if it gets too rough for the pontoons, it can sink down and ride it out like a regular oil rig. And it can still maneuver, I would imagine. These devices come in many different forms, on many different platforms, and including what I believe is also the new satellite system, soon to be 42,000. This, I believe, is the largest weapon surrounding the planet. Trillion-watt lasers is what they say, those controlling the weather, Just trying to be slow so y'all understand, but these could contain those same devices. The Planned Truth, 1985. My family helped put up the first generation Star Wars system in the 90s, 1995. This is 10 years earlier. They're already talking about who will rule space. Well, we know who rules space. There's no doubt. Stand by. I'm not sure what year this was, 83 or something. Lasers out of space. It was supposed to protect us. The Star Wars system was supposed to defend us from nuclear attack. But as we can tell, they can do way more than that. Stand by. Lasers are nothing new, too. I want to show you some laser demonstrations, and I want to show you a few other things here. A report from a documentary. Here is the hurricane maker. In my opinion, we're looking back to November 12th before the storm got going. I see these, what I call the conveyor belts, spinning all the time in the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean. It is ships, in my opinion. There's no convection. I can't put it on thermo on this one, but it has nothing to do with a hurricane. It is the machine spinning. I've never seen an eye of a storm form before the storm. Those there look suspicious to me too. 2 echoes. I see these echoes all the time. 3 echoes. There's actually maybe 4. I feel like those are ships as well. Yeah, there's some kind of microburst coming out from these areas. But all they need to do is create the atmospheric spin to create a hurricane. There's another something opened up right here beside it. Hurricane Helene, I could see 2 different devices spinning, and it looks like it just deactivated at 4 p.m. It was fully there at 3 p.m. and there it seems to deactivate, and everything just completely changes. I guess it did not work. They ran it for 12 hours. They're trying to create storms where there's no storm. There's no weather. I feel like these were some ships that was with it. I had mentioned in the video that got me removed from Twitter. They don't want you to know about these hurricane makers. I think that's more important than the lasers. When I mention lasers, that throws people off. When I talk about the microwave ships out here controlling the stuff, they don't have a problem with it. But for some reason, the lasers they have a problem with. But this is obviously a laser working a volcano. And it's the same kind of signature that I showed in my previous video about Portugal. I went over Portugal and the Chile fires in my previous video. But this is the same squares that I seen in my videos on Portugal where they lit off dozens of fires with these machines. I would advise y'all to check that video out where Twitter suspended me for exposing the laser system. This one will be the hurricane maker. They're exposing the hurricane maker. Stand by for more truth. You can go to Starlink, live Starlink tracker, or live Starlink. Here's the new train they just put out. Another new train going over. There's only 7,000 something at this moment. 7,184 it looks like. The inactive are just ones that's not turned on yet. Largest weapon on the planet. Soon to be 42,000. They're all at different levels. These are 15 kilometers apart, going over by each other. You can see these at night. You can see satellites. It might not always be these, but you can see satellites at night. There's way more than what they was a while back. We have full signal out here. There's no satellites. One coming by, but we have full signal in Alaska anywhere we work here. Up here is where we fish. This is Web 1, government's own internet. Quite a bit higher. Twice the height. It's at 1,200 kilometers. And these are our GPS system. And I don't guess I have like communications and all. There's hundreds of other satellites that we don't see. Same exact signature that lit off Portugal. I cannot go back that far. It's very distinct. Even zoom out, you can still see it. Nowhere else do I see squares lit up anywhere. And that is a massive volcano. You can see it puffing, but it blows its top again. It's killed quite a few people, around 50 or so the last time I seen it. There it goes, it blew up. Been blowing up for days, my friends. Then Indonesia. There's some other hurricanes I wanted to look at. Major typhoon. Oh, it's been redirected somehow. Oh no, that's the other one. Man, it's just so many storms. Poor Vietnam's about to get some rain. Alright, let's look for some more stuff. I kind of feel like a lot of these fires they create, if they are creating volcanoes going off, it's just additive for the atmosphere, smoke. The entire planet is smoked out, my friends. Looks like another hurricane hit in Spain. I don't know what else to call them. It's just devastating floods that's washing Spain into the ocean. Are they not complying? I mean, everything looks like an attack to me anymore. It's not natural weather. Not a drop of rain falls without their permission. I seen major chemtrailing a couple of days ago in Jordan. I mean, it was huge. I just didn't have time. It was yesterday, I believe. I'm just so busy. I'm trying to rebuild mom's house. I'm going to show you a video of what I'm doing. It's really destroyed right now. Let me see what else. Stand by. Try not to be boring for y'all. Hard to believe they removed me so easily. And I want my $100 back. Y'all were censoring me the whole time. That's not free speech. It says I can't even create a new account. You're not allowed to be on this platform no more. What spam too? I don't even know. So what? I share a video to somebody once a day. No matter who they are, was that hurt their feelings that bad? You can't even share videos. Oh, that's unusual. That's heavy chemtrails. Media cannot be played. That's weird. That is chemtrail fallout. You might be able to run it through here and see what they don't want you to see. That is chemicals falling back onto my shrimp boat. Undeniable. Yeah, I tried to log in on a different device. Yeah, it didn't work. Actually, I was trying to create a new account, but it won't let me. Not without getting a new email, probably a new phone number, all kinds of stuff. Before I started making this video, I was watching this from an anonymous official. Some pretty good information about how they're being controlled. I hope y'all like it. I'm going to try to play it here. I have not watched the whole thing. I only got a few minutes into it. It seemed interested. It might debunk everything I'm saying. I would be appreciative if something did, but something's fishy going on here. They're removing commercial fishermen for just speaking about weather control and satellites, whether it's real or not. Why would they remove me from Twitter? There's crazy stuff being said all over the internet, not real. But why would they censor me? I've been removed from Facebook because of these devices. I've been removed from Twitter because of these devices. X, whatever you want to call it, and the X does look like chemtrails to me. One thin one, one wide one. I see that X all the time in the sky. It looks identical. And are they that scared of what I have to say? They have to remove me completely instead of just telling me to remove a post. I didn't even get a strike or anything. They just completely removed me on all platforms. But the control has a lot to do. I went listen to this, and it seems to kind of fall in line with what I'm saying here. Thank you very much. It's only been out for 50 minutes. Thank you to these people here, whoever they may be. Commercial Fisherman standing by. Let me know if you finish it and what we think of it. I'll let you know at the end if I remember to turn the mute off. Commercial Fisherman standing by. Let's watch this together. Start it over.
No, there is a lot. This is something that I never perceived at all. When I lived in Washington, I thought it was like a dumb conspiracy theory. Even though I worked in the kind of crypto entertainment business, I know a lot of people in the entertainment business, of course, because I worked in television, and I know a lot of people at the intel agencies and in politics, because that's what I did. And you would hear people once in a while say, well, they're all controlled. There are files on that person. And I was like, oh, you sound like a freaking wacko. What are you going to say, like fluoride in the water is bad? But that's actually true. It's true. And I'm not guessing that it's true. I know some of the people involved. There are a lot of people in the entertainment business, but in the cultural business more broadly, certainly in the news business, who are controlled by other forces. Like, obviously, how many of them look independent? How many of them look kind of shifty and afraid? You look at Jimmy Kimmel and I don't know what's going on there, but that guy clearly is nervous, super nervous. We have been trained to believe that our senses are somehow less valid than things that we read on Wikipedia, which is totally controlled by the CIA.
We're not fighting the Chinese people, we're fighting the Chinese Communist Party. And they mean to take us out. It's invisible, but it's happening everywhere. And it's very scary. And the goal is to kind of push us out of the picture and install their system. And their system is a state-driven economic model and centralized control and authoritarianism. Our model is free market capitalism. These two systems are irreconcilable. China is not like anything we've faced before. It is an adversary. It's not a competitor, right? Great power competition. We are in an invisible war. And it's been going on for a long time. You say, what does that mean, an invisible war? Well, it takes many forms. And the vectors of attack are seemingly nowhere but everywhere at the same time. Intellectual property theft, okay? We lose more every year in intellectual property theft than in almost anything. Hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars have been stolen by China to advance their manufacturing, to advance their dual-use technologies, to advance their military, and so forth. This is happening at universities. This is happening at companies. I mean, it was like 2 months ago that a Chinese citizen working at Google left the company with a thumb drive and he was on his way to Beijing. I mean, this is happening every day. You have Chinese scientists at Livermore Labs or wherever stealing stuff. So there's that element, which I think a lot of people understand. What people may not understand is China's ties to organized crime and to money laundering operations. The Chinese at this point have as much, if not more, power than the cartels because they are the money bags behind everything. We lose, 100,000 people to fentanyl every year? Mm-hmm. In World War II, we lost, 400,000 people? We're losing a quarter of the people we lost in World War II every year. And by the way, all the APIs, all the precursors to fentanyl come from one place. They come from China. And it's hard for me to understand if the Chinese Communist Party is in control of pretty much everything, and they are, it's hard for me to fathom that they wouldn't be willingly trying to poison the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It's deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. We have across the world, the United States being thwarted by the likes of Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, certainly Russia, in this hemisphere, Venezuela, and a lot of it goes back to China. There is a new axis that's developing, and China is the economic might behind all of this. And so we're seeing it play out in lots of different places, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's coordinated.
It seems to me like they have us at pretty much every angle, which scares the hell out of me. I mean,
remember Daryl Morley?
I don't.
He was the GM for a big basketball team. I want to say the Mavs. It'll come back to me. I'm getting a brain fog moment. But he tweeted something in support of the Hong Kong pro-democracy protesters, and he got pilloried by everybody in the NBA. And so why? Because the NBA makes a ton of money broadcasting in China, and the Chinese picked up the phone and said, this guy's got to go. There are only something like 40 American movies that are screened in China every year, and so Hollywood falls over itself to appease China to make sure that the movie can hit the Chinese censorship apparatus. So everything is compromised. Universities make money when people pay full tuition, and you've got 300,000 Chinese kids in America largely paying full tuition. So the universities are like, I'm not going to talk about China. Think tanks. A think tank will be encouraged by China to write a puff piece or a neutral piece on a given topic, like what China's doing in Africa, okay? And China will say, hey, here's a few million bucks. There's more to come. We want to see what the outcome is. The think tank will write a piece, like a big Washington think tank, which will get picked up by the New York Times, will get picked up by the Washington Post. And the next thing you know, China is a benevolent actor in Africa. Wait, how did that happen? If you were to dissect it, how did it happen? And so, again, the vectors, it's invisible, but it's happening everywhere. And it's very scary. And they have a goal, and the goal is to kind of push us out of the picture and install their system. And their system is a state-driven economic model and centralized control and authoritarianism. Our model is freedom of the individual, autonomy, and free market capitalism. These two systems are irreconcilable, okay? So this is what we're fighting. So it's more than just a country. It's what we're fighting is an ideology. We're not fighting the Chinese people, we're fighting the Chinese Communist Party. And they mean to take us out. And they have said, we will take Taiwan, we will be the powerhouse in robotics and AI and synthetic biology and semiconductors. This is what we're gonna do. And we'll leave a few crumbs to everybody else as long as they toe the line. And America's just kind of in our way at this point. And I don't understand how our policymakers don't see this with clarity. We have a vast preponderance of our electricity transformers, especially the large ones, that are Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me if those Chinese transformers had a back door and they could be turned off. There's a lot to unpack there. Mm-hmm. There's an element that we can discuss that relates to national security. There's an element that relates to power generation. There's another element that relates to, transmission and distribution. I'll begin with the national security stuff. We have a vast preponderance of our electricity transformers, especially the large ones, that are Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It wouldn't surprise me if those Chinese transformers had a back door and they could be turned off.
We don't even check them.
That is super dangerous. And we need, and I tend to stay out of political discussions, but I sort of scratch my head when one of the first executive orders in the Biden administration was to allow for Chinese electricity transformers. And the prevailing thought was, oh, these are commoditized products, you know, who cares? And, you know, certainly the electricity companies wanted them because they were cheap, right? And they're looking for their bottom line, and the bottom line reflects in their share price, and their share price reflects in the CEO's, you know, compensation.
I want to pause right there for a second. They just redid our electrical grid here in Florida. We used to cover the top of our poles with a plastic cover to keep the rain off the poles so they last longer. The new ones looks like some kind of aluminum piece of triangle that there's no way it's protecting the wood. I don't even understand what it's for. And I had a suspicion that it was all Chinese products. This man's telling the truth about the grid, and it's just been replaced by something I don't recognize on our poles here. If anybody looks, I will make a video of it if y'all, you know, stay tuned. I wanted to make one, but I wanted to pause that for a second. China has taken over my entire clothing and everything for seafood. It's got China wrote on it. My gear, fishing gear. Standing by.
I get it, but I think we need to do a very deep dive on where we're vulnerable. And it's not just in our electricity transformers. Our port cranes are also vulnerable, those that are made in China. And there are a lot of other vulnerabilities that we haven't even thought about.
The water
supply, sanitation. And so, like the Colonial Pipeline, that was just, that was the appetizer for other things that could happen. And so there's a national security threat. We need to fix that. But we'll table that for a second. On the power generation side, we are endowed with some of the best energy resources in the world. We have oil, we have natural gas, and a lot of it. We have all the minerals that we need to make, electricity lines, but we just don't have the will to. We were a net energy exporter, several years ago, and now I don't know where we are, but the trend line isn't what it used to be. And I don't really have a lot of heartache about transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable sources at all. In fact, my wife has a Tesla. We have solar panels on my roof. And that's great. The problem is we have to be intellectually honest about how these things work. So when you have a giant solar farm or a giant wind turbine farm, what happens when the sun isn't shining? What happens when the wind isn't turning the turbine? So that's a problem. And then you have to think about baseline power. If I'm a manufacturing company, I can't just rely on power like, oh, it's sunny today, I can start my manufacturing process. You need baseline power. And so to get baseline power, one of the solutions is to create battery storage. You need to have battery storage, right? Such that when the wind doesn't blow, you still have power. Now, to me, there's a stupefying level of intellectual dishonesty when it comes to the green energy world. While I agree that we should transition, I'm not going to dispute that. What we're doing is if we were to flip the green switch tomorrow, we give China the ability to become the OPEC cartel of one. In other words, China produces the vast preponderance of our solar panels. 90% of the photovoltaic material that goes into a solar panel is made by ethnic minorities in China in slave factories. These minorities are called the Uyghurs. They're not ethnically Chinese. And the Chinese are putting them in labor camps for making solar panels. So do we believe in human rights, or do we believe in climate change? Hopefully it's both. And then there's the issue of battery storage. Who makes the batteries? 70% of the refined lithium for lithium-ion batteries comes from China. 90% of the, 100% of the cobalt pretty much comes from Africa, where like 7-year-olds are in mines digging stuff up, which is awful. It all gets refined in China. The rare earth magnets for wind turbines are all made in China. And the list goes on. And by the way, to make a solar panel, what are you doing? China is burning coal from coal-fired power plants, and they're building like, 2 new coal-fired plants a month.
Wow.
To run electricity, to make a solar panel where they use, silicon tetrafluoride and hydrofluoric acid to make a solar panel that gets exported to the developed world, and we're like, oh, we're so good. Well, wait a second. What are we doing? And so I think we need to reshore a lot of that manufacturing activity to the United States, such that as we make this transition from fossil fuels into something else, which by the way should include nuclear, we do it intelligently. And we're not beholden to one supplier of everything. That's super dangerous.
Where do they get the lithium from?
So lithium is produced in one of two ways. There are hard rock deposits. The deposit is called spodumene. Then they sort of mash it up and turn it into a powder and then run a chemistry experiment and separate all the things out of it. Typically that's done in places like Australia. In South America, they have what are known as salar deposits. So think of the Great Salt Lake in Utah. Now imagine that going on, that's 100 times bigger in places like Bolivia. Bolivia has a salt flat called Uyuni that sits, you can see it from space. It's like this white dot in the middle of the country. It's reputed to have 50% of the world's lithium. And so the way
50%?
Yeah, and so the way you process that is underneath the crust, you have salmuera. I don't know how you say that in English. Like a salty, mushy water, and you basically drill, stick a straw in there, pull out the liquid, and then you bake it in the sun till it turns into a powder, and then it becomes a chemistry experiment. You separate the magnesium from the lithium and stuff. The Chinese are basically taking all of that and refining it in China.
How many lithium deposits do they have control of throughout the world? Do you have any idea?
It's not a question of controlling the lithium deposit. If they are the buyer of all the lithium, they don't need to control the deposit, although they do have some. Don't get me wrong, they have lithium deposits around the world. But let's assume if you're a random mining company and your only buyer is China, and China sets the price, you're a price taker. So they can control you without having to actually control the mine.
Okay. I hope I'm wrong here, but it is my understanding that China's investing in all these countries. Afghanistan's one with, from what I understand, very rich lithium supply.
And copper.
And they're putting in the infrastructure so that the Afghans can mine that lithium and give it or sell it to China. So
100%.
Would that be control of that mine? Because they put the infrastructure in.
Look, there are a lot of ways to control things without actually having to control them. So if you control the egress from the mine and you own the road, great. If you've bought out the government of a given country, that's, check. And if you are the buyer of everything that country produces, do you not control the country?
Yes, I agree. China is just going to push us out of the way. We're a corporate United States of America, and if they've already bought all of our corporation, who owns the United States? Nothing in our houses are made in the United States anymore. Even our food. I could show you where we catch a type of jellyfish in the commercial industry that they send to China, and they can add a pound of jellyfish to a pound of hamburger and have 2 pounds of hamburger. I was thinking that your McDonald's hamburgers was mostly soy, but it might be cannonball jellyfish. And there's some chemtrails in this, even though it's glitching out. Here, let me show you. I don't know what kind of weather Newfoundland's getting right now, but it's definitely heavily chemtrailed out right there. Lots of chemtrails together. That is an operation that has nothing to do with normal air traffic. Thank you to the Warriors at 35 minutes. I'm so glad I remembered to take the mute off this time. Sometimes I'll, like there, I received a phone call, I returned. Called them back there. I had to put it on mute, but I forget to take it off mute. Yeah, that was a glitch here. Anyhow, that was quite a bit of information. Why I think we were censored. Going to hurricane makers. Looks like chemtrails to me. Well, to get glitchy because I didn't let it load. Looks suspicious. But poor Italy has been flooded. I mean, poor Spain has been flooded so much it's not funny. They're getting rain right this smack at the minute. They can create these spins I talked about with a lot of different ways. If they got that energy on satellites, which we see the ripples way offshore, way beyond any kind of machine, land-based. It's on ships and other devices. Or Spain and Portugal. Light them on fire, then wash them off. I showed you the Portugal fires in my previous video. Please watch that if you haven't seen it yet. Thank you to the Warriors that's come over from Twitter. I will try to make another Twitter account, maybe under the same name, maybe under a different name. Don't know what they'll like. But everyone, please share this everywhere that you can. Get as many people to my to my YouTube, Rumble, or Patreon. I have a Patreon account if anybody needs the link. I've had it for a while. It's just been no one on there, but I got a couple of followers now, so I'm going to try to make sure we post videos. And now that I'm not on Twitter, I will try to get up to the comments on Rumble. It's just been mostly spam comments, in my opinion. Chemtrailing right this minute are here, too. Chemtrails. Very clear. I wish it was that clear all the time. Depends on how the angle of the satellite or how they blur it out. They actually blur it out as well. But that is 1, 2, 3 or 4 chemtrails there together. Offshore of Oregon. Yeah, Hawaii. They get chemtrails here too. Just 2 hours ago. Our entire Pacific Ocean is clouded for the most part. And you can see why they spray it. That's about to get a major hurricane. Typhoon, hurricane, whatever you want to call them over here. Try to get mellowed out a little bit before it gets to him. Be safe if you're watching. Unusual ripples. Uniform lines are not formed in nature. You can see it something right away. Before I even clicked it on, I seen it was some kind of pulsating. But it's not natural. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That stuff is what scares me. It looked like it was the chili fires. Remember I was showing you the chili fires? Same kind of lines. And I would see that creating thunderstorms sometimes too when the conditions are right. Probably later when it cools off again. I was in Australia, by the way. The ripples are. There's how our volcano is doing today. Just looking at that earlier. Remember the squared off piece. Thank you to the Warriors, 41 minutes. I'll let you go. Like a whole TV hour. I had commercials for you. Only commercials it would be is how to turn this mess off. Look at the ripples up here. That don't look natural. Not a natural wake to me. Islands leave wakes. They do. But these overlapping ripples look funny. You can see the head of it too. Look at that. A little bonus for the Warriors. That's not a natural impulse, whatever that is. Some kind of energy. I believe this is Russia. I believe. Geoengineering operations cover the entire planet, my friends. As it is breaking daylight. You can see ripples in that already. Daylight hasn't quite reached it. Same kind of spider webs that I talk about. Very unique. I mean, very universal lines, and they're unique as well. Weather's big business. Yeah, it's coming to Madagascar. I wonder how many hurricanes they've had. Weird looking map. Thank you, everybody. Everybody. I might as well look at this real quick. It is the big news. We're going to get a tropical storm in almost Thanksgiving. And not remember ever getting a tropical storm in where I live during mullet season. Is it? And they got the spin going. Oh, that's 12 hours too. Shoot. I feel like I was on 2 hours. That's like chemtrails. Need more material. Keep spraying. Yeah, there's chemtrails in this stuff. That is a chemtrail. They're spraying the hurricane. All this looks like aluminum. Plus saying they were creating a storm where there was no weather. They just pump it out. None of this looks like a natural storm system. Like an X there, looks like. Yeah, look at the chemtrails in this stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, these people kill me what they get away with. Spray it. We don't have enough material. Let's make sure we spray it. Oh, this looks like nothing to some people, but it was clearing out, and they wanted to refill it back in. It's not a storm it wants to be. The sun's tilted too much. That's why we don't have hurricanes in November. When the earth tilts away from the sun on the northern hemisphere, we don't have hurricane season anymore. That's happened. It's hard to get one going this time of the year. Trying to get a tomato plant to grow in December. It just don't work too good. Anyhow, thank you to the Warriors at 45 minutes. Commercial Fisherman standing by. You have a good night, a good morning, a good day, or a good evening, whatever timeline y'all happen to be on. Commercial Fishing out. Right this second, it is 8 o'clock in Philippines a.m. p.m. here. Stand by.